Brett Norfleet and Nate Noel did not scrimmage. One had an injury designation and one did not. So what does this all mean? Let's talk about it and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I think it's safe to say a leader has emerged at the running back position right now, plus multiple Tigers with some interesting position changes here during fall camp. Before I start the program, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to start today's program with a bit of an injury update. And I will just say so far, so good for the most part in terms of Missouri football injuries. Clearly, if the Tigers are going to reach the heights that we want, including a college football playoff appearance, we're going to need some good injury luck, and that's pretty universal for everyone across the nation at this point, I would say. But the only real concern so far I had noticed the last couple days or so, Brett Norfleet and Jordan Harris, the two Missouri tight ends, in particular Norfleet, of course, is the bigger concern. A bit banged up, as Eli Drinkwitz said, but neither are hurt enough that they won't be available week one against Murray State. In fact, both should be back sometime next week. So it sounds like nothing serious there for Brett Norfleet or Jordan Harris. And while I've talked a lot about Norfleet possibly having a big-time breakout season in the passing game, I think you could really see Jordan Harris be a part of this Missouri offense as well. A guy who played some as a true freshman last year. He's a guy I know the staff likes quite a bit, a big athletic body who can do some damage, I'm sure, as a run blocker. But hey, certainly a guy in short yardage packages, something like that. If you're going to do a little misdirection, a little play action, something like that. Certainly a guy you've got to think is a capable enough receiver to be an important part of that package. So good to hear that Harris, and in particular Brett Norfleet, should be back in practice next week. Now another young player, I would say, Kewan Lacey, true freshman running back, according to Drinkwitz, dealing with a soft tissue injury. Missed a couple practices last week, but reportedly did return on Friday, although did not play in the team's scrimmage the following day. So that's good news that Lacey was at least back in some capacity on Friday. Drinkwitz didn't mention if he was a full or a limited participant in said practice. And that does matter for sure. But at this point, just the fact that Lacey, when you hear soft tissue injury, at least when I hear a soft tissue injury, I immediately get worried about hamstrings. And that's something at this point in the season, any point in the season, of course, you don't want to start dealing with. But for his situation in particular, a young player, a real talent, somebody I think that the Tiger staff would like to see early in this non-conference September portion of the schedule. But with that not happening, it seems like his chances of playing this year would drop dramatically. So the fact that he's back already, hopefully it's not any type of hamstring deal, because again, that's one of those injuries that just seems to linger for months and months and months and would really hinder his ability to get on the field. But speaking of young guys trying to get on the field, Josh Manning played some last year on special teams for Missouri, a former four-star high school recruit out of Lee Summit that is a guy who seems like he's willing to do just about anything to get on the football field. A guy who will probably be seeing a lot of action on special teams once again. But a guy who's being productive enough here reportedly in fall camp, seems like it's going to be hard to keep him off the field entirely as a receiver in his true sophomore season here. Manning really stood out, according to Drinkwitz, with 100 yards and a couple touchdowns in the scrimmage. By the way, true freshman James Madison made a spectacular one-handed catch for a touchdown, as I gathered from Missouri's social media feeds. And also Drinkwitz pointed out, somebody I've talked a lot about lately here, Daniel Blood has just been a really solid and really good player through all of camp. He's got, obviously, if he's going to be playing the slot receiver spot for the most part, even though Missouri will move Luther Burden around a good bit, obviously with Burden in the slot, Mekhi Miller, a possession-type slot receiver in his own right. Going to be tough for Blood to get on the field, but he's a guy that in small doses I really liked as a player last season. So we'll see what happens with young Mr. Blood. But at the running back position, I have to say I think Drinkwitz has started to show his hand a little bit. First, by making Nate Noel the lone running back who's been available to the media so far in this young season. I thought that was pretty telling, but I didn't want to completely jump to conclusions, especially if Marcus Carroll himself were made available to the media in the coming days. But to me, this is an even bigger indication that Noel has got to have the lead right now, is this information here from Drinkwitz. He said Missouri held Noel out of the scrimmage today as a, quote, precautionary measure. He says, I've seen that guy get tackled versus Texas A&M, North Carolina. He's had plenty of carries in his career. Didn't need to see him live. I think we're very confident in what he can do. Very excited about how he fits into this offense. So that's a pretty good indication, not only the words there from Drinkwitz, but of course actually holding him out as a precautionary measure. No injury designation, unlike Brett Norfleet and Jordan Harris and Kawan Lacey. Kawan. I think it's Kewan. I've heard Drinkwitz say Kewan, so we'll go with that. But regardless, I think all of that points toward, at least for week one, at the very least, Noel is going to be your starter as the Missouri running back, and it seems like he'll probably get the first couple of series as well. If there's going to be one guy who's going to get the majority of the carries early in the season, I've got to think it's Nate Noel at this point. And he continues here on Marcus Carroll. He says, I think we ended up giving him 5 carries today. His best asset is to be a physical downhill runner. Make sure he's comfortable with that and protection. So he was really good. Lacey was a little bit beat up. He's dealing with a little bit of a soft tissue injury, and he wasn't able to go today. So again, it wasn't as though I do think that Marcus Carroll can be a very good complement to Nate Noel at the very least. When you need 3rd and 1, 4th and 2, that kind of thing, it seems like maybe he's the guy you want to give the ball to, more of a downhill style runner from what I've seen. So again, I just think that whether Nate Noel is the guy or not, you're probably going to see Drinkwitz, as usual, commit to one running back most of the time, though I'm not expecting a Cody Schrader type of share of the snaps or the carries for this coming fall. But you know what? Speaking of the running back spot, one freshman who came to Missouri as an athlete, well, he started fall camp with the safeties. He's now moved over to running back and had actually 80 yards rushing in the scrimmage. So an interesting name to keep an eye on, and another really interesting name that's kind of come out of nowhere to me that is fighting for snaps at the boundary safety position. No, not Corey Flagg. Let's talk about Caleb Flagg coming up here in just a little bit. But first, again, while I have to admit, the sports calendar with the Olympics wrapping up, it gets a little bit slow before football officially kicks off, I should say. But you don't have to worry about that with FanDuel, because all summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there is something for everyone every day, all summer long. And one thing I would like to see from FanDuel, can I make a request here to my people at FanDuel Sportsbook? A lot of the elite teams in college football have an exact win totals. In other words, you can bet on odds for 12 wins, 11 wins, 10 wins, 9 wins. If you hit that exact number, you win your bet. But Missouri, not among those teams. Come on, I want to bet on Missouri to win 11 games. What do you think the odds would be there? Plus 250? Something like that? 300? I don't know. You tell me. But regardless, until FanDuel puts it up there, we are screwed. But there's plenty of other things, of course. There's plenty of dreams to bet up all the time. Just open up the app, head over to FanDuel.com, and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. And if you like my quick-hitting format, well, you got to check out Locked On College Football as well. Spencer McLaughlin is going to get you ready for another thrilling season of college football. We're talking the changing landscape of the portal, NIL, of course, the new expanded college football playoff, never-ending realignment talk, the whole deal. It's Locked On College Football, available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I was talking a lot about the running back position there at the end of the last segment. I think it's fair to say that whether it is Nate Noel or Marcus Carroll, those two guys are likely to see the vast majority of the snaps at running back. You never know, though. One of these freshmen, could it be Kewan Lacey? Could he get some action in there? Or could it be Austyn Dendy? Yes, Austyn Dendy had started fall camp at the safety position, came in out of high school with the designation as an athlete. Well, now he's playing at the running back position. The Tigers decided, hey, if we're going to make this move, let's make the move now. Make it early in fall camp. And apparently he had a productive day in the scrimmage yesterday with about 80 yards rushing, according to Eli Drinkwitz. So Dendy, and Drinkwitz, by the way, feels like absolutely this is the best spot for him. So Tigers clearly looking for as many playmakers as possible here in 2024, while Drinkwitz not likely to give somebody like Dendy, especially a guy with relatively little experience at the running back position. I'm sure he played it some in high school, but the deal is, regardless, whether it's Lacey or it's Dendy or anybody else, these inexperienced backs, not likely to get too much action, but as creative as Kirby Moore can be, you never know. A package here and there, give them one play that they need to work on and perfect during game week preparation. Heck, that one play, if it ends up being a 25-yard type deal, it could be the difference in a ball game. So always keep those type of guys in the back of your mind as true freshmen, even if, especially at the skill positions, if they have explosive play capability, because with this new redshirt freshman rule, you can play in up to 4 ball games and still keep your redshirt designation. Hey, that's a great thing, even if you don't get into that many ball games. Now you have to prepare as if you are going to get into these ball games. Whether you truly have a redshirt season and never get a snap, well, you can no longer just sit on your laurels as a redshirt freshman. You have to be, if you're healthy and dressed out, you better be ready to play at a moment's notice. Treat practice that way in preparation. Hey, that's how you get ready to be an actual member of the 2 deep in the future. And speaking of running backs and position changes, well, this one is going in the reverse. Jeremiah Beasley started off his career, and by his career, I mean he enrolled early at the University of Michigan out of high school, played this past spring, played spring football with the defending national champion Wolverines, and transferred to Missouri. Holy moly. Now that's your new world for you, right? My head is spinning, frankly, with that quick of a turnaround. That's just not something you saw in the past, but that type of option is now available to college football players, good, bad, or indifferent. But it's obviously good that Jeremiah Beasley is in a Missouri uniform, a guy the Tigers certainly liked out of high school. And again, he went to Michigan as a running back. Now he's playing linebacker for Missouri. And as a true freshman, according to Eli Drinkwitz, again, looks like he might well at least be a special teams contributor for the Tigers in 2024. Now, speaking of contributors and transfers, well, Corey Flagg from University of Miami, the Hurricanes, well, He was a guy that Blake Baker was certainly familiar with. Fortunately, Flagg decided to stick around when Baker decided to leave for LSU. Now, he could definitely be a part of this linebacker rotation. In fact, I expect him to be this season as a transfer from Miami. Those type of players generally aren't transferring just to sit on the bench. What surprises me is that his brother, Caleb Flagg, a guy that I just assumed was a throw-in, a walk-on, quite possibly. I believe Caleb Flagg is a walk-on. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong out here. Maybe at some point he's been awarded a scholarship, but here's all I know. Whether he's a walk-on or he's on scholarship, he's on the roster. And according to Eli Drinkwitz, Caleb's been playing that boundary safety position. He's been very consistent. I think he does an excellent job for us on special teams, and he's just trying to improve every day. He's in a competition there with Marvin Burks at the boundary safety position. You got two really good players there, but he's been super consistent. So Caleb Flagg making a real push for playing time here. I got to say, I did not see that one coming. When I talked about Missouri safeties and secondary in the preseason here, that's a name that has not come up. So obviously it's a name that needs to be on my radar and every Missouri's radar at this point. If he's in a genuine competition with Marvin Burks for one of those safety spots, going to be really interesting to see if Caleb Flagg can get on the field with a bunch of consistent hard work and excellent play on special teams and all that good stuff. Apparently he can play pretty good in coverage and tackle as well in coverage. And since I'm talking about the secondary, I want to talk a little bit more about Nicholas Deloche as well. By the way, is it Deloche? Deloche? We'll just have to figure it out one of these days. I'm going to go with the more French-sounding Deloche at this point. But according to Drinkwitz, super explosive athlete, very consistent. Him and Toriano Pride rotate quite a bit with the number one unit. He's got great man-to-man skills, really good athlete, can run, smart player, just doesn't have a ton of confidence because he hasn't had to do it on the main stage. But like we've told him, if you can cover Theo Weiss, Mookie Cooper, Luther Burden, Mekhi Miller, Josh Manning, and Marquise Johnson, you can cover anybody. And so I think that has built up his confidence. So here was my original take on Deloche, and I think it'd be natural if some Missouri fans got worried about Toriano Pride and said, oh no, is Pride the transfer from Clemson and East St. Louis, does this mean he's not quite up to snuff so far? But honestly, I took it a little bit differently. To me, when a redshirt freshman bubbles up the roster like that, it seems like it was more of a thing that he's passed multiple players, it would seem, in some ways to fight for playing time here. So it's not just a Toriano Pride thing is my point here. I think that's pretty obvious. He was fairly off the radar. Again, sort of like Caleb Flagg to a little bit lesser of an extent, but Deloche was kind of off the radar for me as a guy who could potentially start here. But obviously he's not off the staff's radar, and he shouldn't be off our radar right now either. So again, to Drinkwitz's point about, hey, if you can cover this litany of talented Missouri receivers, well, that's kind of one of the nice things about being in the SEC, one of these upper echelon schools at this point. Even if you're just practicing, you're getting really good reps against really good competition, and you're getting the best coaching possible as well. And remember a while back when somebody was saying, hey, how about some discussions about special teams? Oh, that's good stuff, because now I feel like I've talked way too much about the place kicking position over the last few weeks. But you know what? I'm going to do it once again. We need an update on Blake Craig. How did he do in this past scrimmage? Let's talk about him and the left tackle position once again as well. But first, I want to tell you about Gametime, because this time of year, it is the perfect time to go to Major League Baseball games. Really good weather lately, too, by the way. And the St. Louis Cardinals will be back in town this coming Friday against the Dodgers, by the way. Premium opponent. Some good giveaways for that weekend as well, including an adult Cardinals jersey for the first 25,000 fans on Friday. Just $20 all-in pricing to get into that particular ball game. And when you use Gametime, you know you're always going to get the lowest price, or else Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, it's been said many times to the point of cliche that happiness in life is a function of realistic expectation. So in other words, as much as I would like to pipe every drive that I hit in the game of golf 300 yards down the middle of the fairway, that just simply is not a realistic proposition, and I'm setting myself up for misery if that's the expectation. Well, similarly, I think some football fans set themselves up for misery when it comes to the place kicker position. They demand or even expect perfection from these guys. And if a kick is ever missed, well, my God, you had one job, as the old cliche, as another cliche goes these days. Well, again, I think some people have awfully short memories because they're worrying about, I think, comparing Blake Craig, the new Missouri kicker, to frankly something that doesn't exist. Because, well, obviously Harrison Mevis was great for Missouri. No question about that. One of the greatest kicks of all time against Kansas State last season. Not just in Missouri history. How about college football history? I'm willing to go that far with it. But, of course, Harrison Mevis was not perfect either. He missed a kick that cost us a game quite likely in 2022 as well. So, again, let's compare Blake Craig to other human beings who have kicked a ball and not a robot that makes 100% of his field goals. Because to my knowledge, that particular machine is not yet allowed to play college football. So, it sure seems like Blake Craig, by all accounts, especially from Eli Drinkwitz, has done quite well in camp so far. Remains just not, in terms of the list of concerns for Missouri this season, for me, place kicker is way down the list. I'm not saying it's a zero. I'm just saying it's not near the top of my list of concerns. Frankly, obviously we'll just have to see how Craig looks in an actual game. But apparently he was, I believe, either 5 of 6 or 6 of 7. He missed one kick in the scrimmage, that one kick being from about 51 yards. Well, he came back later in the scrimmage and drilled one from a similar distance of about 51 yards or so. Frankly, if I'm Eli Drinkwitz against Murray State, the last thing I want to do in the first game is make his very first kick like a 55-yarder or something like that. If we're in that position, leave the offense out there and go for it. Or if it's, 4th and 20 or something, maybe try a pooch punt. But I just don't think there's any reason to really put Craig in that type of position. Hopefully his first kick is an easy one. Heck, hopefully it's an extra point because Missouri has scored a touchdown on the first drive against Murray State. But regardless, that first field goal, sure be nice if it was like a 35-yarder or something instead of 55, just so he can hear the cannon go off, hear Marching Mizzou start playing the fight song, and then we can all just get that one out of the way. Again, back to the golf swing, right? That first shot off the first tee, always the most nerve-wracking shot of the day. If you get off the first tee pretty good, you usually relax quite a bit. So I think if Blake Craig makes that first kick, I think he'll relax quite a bit. So let's give him pretty close to a chip shot to, again, force a golf analogy. And while I've talked quite a bit about the left tackle battle to protect Brady Cook's blind side this season, it sure is starting to sound more and more likely that Marcus Bryant is entrenched as the number one left tackle. Also, Eli Drinkwitz did something I've been doing a lot this offseason, which is give Kaden Green, the Oklahoma transfer, a lot of credit because he spent all of this spring playing left tackle for the Tigers. And obviously, him being willing to slide over to left guard and do whatever it takes for Missouri to have its best 5 offensive linemen out there, well, that's really a credit to Kaden Green. And obviously, my point is Drinkwitz gave Kaden Green a ton of credit, for being that unselfish of a teammate, basically just saying, hey, that's just the type of guy that he is. I will say, though, I'm willing to bet quite a bit of money that Kaden Green will be sliding over to left tackle next season for Missouri. That is the money position in the NFL. And while I think there were multiple reasons why Kaden Green decided to transfer from Oklahoma to Missouri, and of course, including his seemingly very close friendship with his former high school teammate Armand Mimbu as well. So at the same time, again, the money position is tackle compared to guard and center in the future when it comes to the NFL. So it seems like Kaden Green will want to test his mettle on the outside at some point at the blind side. But for now, at left guard, hey, that's a heck of a strong left guard, and that is where Green played most of the season last year for the Sooners as a true freshman. Look for Kaden Green to take a big step forward for the Tigers this season. And again, credit to him for being a really unselfish teammate, it certainly would seem. And speaking of thanks to you all for watching and listening to this program as always. Thanks for sharing the program with a fellow true son or daughter. Go to lockedonmizzou.com for all your links to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, ad-free at Amazon Music as well. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.